Hello guys and gals, and this is part 6 of our reading of Whodunit, You Decide, Many Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad, and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. And, as always, all rights reserved, and there are no exceptions to that I can see. Anyways, in our last one, there was a missing statue, and it was really an interesting case. But we are ready for No Break for the Wearies. And let's get started here. The district attorney points to the defendant, a handsome man in his 20s. Prosecution. For years, Adam Weary had been living off his father's millions, and then the money dried up. Adam's new stepmother finally persuaded her husband to stop supporting Adam's spendthrift ways. Adam's art gallery was in desperate need of funds in order to survive, money he could no longer get from his father, and that's why on May 15th, Adam Weary coldly planned and executed the double murder of his father and stepmother. The prosecution's case seemed solid. After the elderly executive George Weary married Pauline Gibson, the young beauty immediately took control of their finances, redecorating the hillside mansion and cutting off George's monetary outlays to his son. Adam had tried many jobs during his young life: restaurateur, film producer, artist, and finally owner of an art gallery. Each product had been lavishly subsidized by an indulgent father until Pauline came along. Despite the new development, Adam remained the secondary heir, inheriting the entire Weary fortune if both George and his new wife died. According to the defense's opening statement, Adam drove over to the Hillside Mansion on the morning of May 15th for breakfast. While there, Adam claims Pauline asked him to change the oil in George's Cadillac. It seemed the millionaire refused to go to the expense of a professional oil change, and usually did the job himself, but Pauline was worried that George was getting too old for such exertion and might injure himself. Adam readily agreed, changing the Cadillac's oil and leaving the mansion at 11 a.m., just as a light, steady rain began to fall. Adam's parting words were to remind Pauline about his gallery reception. Gallery reception. He was counting on both of them to come that afternoon at 2 from the mansion. Adam drove straight to his gallery, and where he remained until he was informed of the deaths. At 5 p.m., Pauline's friend Sissy Yonkers dialed 911. Something may have happened, she told the emergency operator. Pauline was supposed to be at my place at 4 to go shopping. She's never late. She was going to drive there directly from the gallery, and her husband was going to drive to the airport to catch a business flight to Dallas. I telephoned his son's gallery. Neither one of them ever showed up. They've been missing for hours. The 911 operator took down the report and did not share what he already knew, that the Wearies weren't missing. They were dead. At 1:30 that afternoon, George's Cadillac had flown through a guardrail and plummeted to the bottom of the ravine, half a mile down the hill from the mansion. The plush leather and wood interior held the mangled remains of George and Pauline Weary. A later inspection of the vehicle showed that the brake lines had been nearly severed. Although fingerprints had been wiped clean from the area around the brakes, clear sets of Adam Weary's prints were found on other parts of the under chassis. The district attorney concluded his opening statement. The prosecution. Only Adam Weary had a motive. No one else profited from their deaths. Only Adam had opportunity. He was the only outsider admitted into the Weary home that morning. And although Adam will tell you his flimsy, unbelievable story about being asked to change his father's oil for the first time in his life, you will find that only Adam Weary had the means to commit these murders, since only his prints are found under the car. Trial witness and evidence. This crime can be solved with 2 clues. Medical examiner's testimony. Medical examiner. Despite the airbags, both descendants were dead on impact. George Weary was in the driver's seat wearing a seatbelt. His wounds were consistent with those expected, a broken neck and spine, other non-lethal fractures, and multiple contusions. Pauline Weary had not been wearing a seatbelt. Her wounds also included a broken spine and were generally consistent with those expected. On defense cross-examination, the coroner admits that one of Pauline's wounds is not consistent with the crash. A severe open contusion on the back of her head. The ecchymosis, discoloration and swelling, indicates the wound had been inflicted before Pauline Weary's death. Also, white gravel fragments were embedded in the wound. The medical examiner also reported that the back of the descendant's dress was wet and dirty and contained white gravel fragments. Police crime scene report. A homicide detective testified that no empty oil cans or other evidence of an oil change were found in the Weary's garage. Defense. What other findings can you report from your examination of the garage and the grounds? Homicide detective. We found a patch of spilled oil on the garage floor in the spot where the Cadillac had been parked. The fingerprints of the accused were not found on the other car in the garage. Pauline Weary's Porsche. The brakes on the Porsche had not been tampered with. Blood was discovered on the white gravel path halfway between the mansion and the garage. The gravel had been disturbed around that spot. Defense Exhibit A, prenuptial agreement. The defense introduces into evidence the prenuptial agreement between George and Pauline Weary, witnessed and signed a month before their marriage. In the document, Pauline gave up all claims to community property and agreed in the event of a divorce to a lump settlement of $200,000. The defense introduced this evidence in an attempt to show that the Weary marriage was fragile from the beginning and unlikely to last. Prosecution Exhibit C, George Weary's will. Hoping to clearly establish motive, the prosecution asked the Weary lawyer to read aloud the provisions of George Weary's will, drafted a week after his marriage. In the will, George Weary left the bulk of his estate to his wife, Pauline, in the event of her death. Before the will could be probated, Pauline's portion of the estate would be reverted to George's previous heir, his only child, Adam Weary. Defense Exhibit B, receipt from car interior. The defense, in an attempt to establish an alibi for the time of the brake tampering, introduced a receipt found crumpled in the ashtray of the wrecked Cadillac. The receipt for a quart of milk and a carton of cigarettes is from a convenience store located at the bottom of the hill near the Weary estate. It was stamped at 11:48 a.m. on May 15th, the day of the murder. The defense uses this receipt to demonstrate that someone used the Cadillac after Adam left the house, and that the brakes must have been in working order at that time. Prosecution introduces the sales clerk on duty at the convenience store at the time. She says she cannot remember either the sale or the car. The prosecution claims that the receipt had been fabricated and planted in the Cadillac to prove Adam Weary with an alibi. To provide Adam Weary with an alibi. So, let's go see what the prosecution has to say. What was this one called? No break. Okay. These are alphabeticals, and so it's... jury deliberations on a no break. Okay. Female jury members agree that the prenuptial agreement was unfair. A young, desirable woman married to an extremely wealthy elderly man deserves more than $200,000 in a divorce settlement. Male jury members, however, concentrate on the oil change. What about the lack of used oil, oily rags, and oil cans? This seems to incriminate Adam. The fresh oil stain on the floor, however, does seem to support his story. When discussing cars, a jury member poses an interesting question. How could Adam have known that the Wearys would be using only one car, since the couple had separate plans for the rest of the day? It seems logical that they would have used both cars. You and other jury members focus on the condition of Pauline's body. What is the significance of the severe contusion that occurred prior to death, probably suffered on the path from the house to the garage? The state of her dress and the presence of blood on the path also point to this conclusion. Pauline evidently had been injured prior to getting in the car. The receipt found in the Cadillac seems to give Adam a viable alibi, but if Adam did not tamper with the car, who did? What really happened on the afternoon of May 15th? Is Adam Weary guilty or not? Your jury has been arguing for 2 days. Okay, let's go to the verdict. Let me see. Okay, here it is. You agree on reasonable doubt. You find Adam Weary not guilty. A month after the verdict, Adam sells the mansion. The movers discover a diary hidden under Pauline's mattress. In the private journal, the dead woman describes her chilling plan to kill her husband and frame her stepson. As soon as Pauline signed the despised prenuptial agreement, she formed a plot to kill off George and get her hands on his millions. She planned to invite Adam over and ask him to change the oil, securing his fingerprints on the under chassis of George's Cadillac. Pauline herself would then dispose of the oil change equipment and sabotage the brakes, wearing gloves in order to eliminate her prints. After George dies in the crash, she would tell the police that she had originally planned to ride with him and that Adam had evidently schemed to kill them both. With this information in hand, the authorities pieced together a scenario. Shortly after Adam changed the oil, George took out the car to buy milk and cigarettes. An hour later, Pauline sabotaged the brakes. Then about 1:25 p.m., the couple left the house, walking to the garage and their separate cars. But on the path, Pauline accidentally slipped on the wet gravel and fell, knocking herself unconscious. George was frantic with worry and managed, despite his age, to lift his wife into the Cadillac, intending to drive her to the nearest emergency room. The end result, of course, was that Pauline not only succeeded in killing her husband and framing her stepson, but also managed to accidentally kill herself. So, this has been a reading of Whodunit, You Decide. Mini Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad, illustrated by Lucy Corvino. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.